make my microphone work. It is indeed beautiful here, and good to have you. We're starting a little bit later than normal for our second show today on March 1st. It's because the Baileys are in New Zealand, and they've got this funny time thing. They don't understand Texas time. I don't know. I thought we were the right ones, and they're... No, just kidding. Mark and Sam Bailey, their team are married since, I think, when they first met in 2007, and they've been working on viruses, what they are, what they're not. And Samantha Bailey, she kind of got religion some years ago when she got red-pilled and went on YouTube, and now she's a rock star on YouTube because she talks about things, how to stay healthy and not get sick from a perspective of no germs, which changes the whole thing, doesn't it? So let's go to New Zealand, see these little cuties and see what they're up to. The Baileys, hi, good morning. It's 8 o'clock in the morning in New Zealand. Welcome, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Patrick. And we can tell you that we're a day ahead here, so
you did?
We can tell you that. Yeah. So
we can tell you the future.
We can tell you what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah, could you tell me what happened in the stock market today? I could make some money. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
like
they already worked. I know they worked that one out a long time ago, unfortunately.
They worked it out. So Samantha Bailey, we'll start with you on your background. You went to med school long ago, right? And were kind of just a regular doc. And then what flipped you to looking at things more closely? Did you have a moment in time?
Yeah, it's probably, I guess, like everybody, probably 2020 with COVID, but it was a gradual process. And yeah, I think we talked about this on your show once before, that I think with COVID, it was so brutal, the realizing what was going on on a bigger scale. So understanding the influence of big pharma, governments, journalists, and this book, Virus Mania, was incredibly important for me at waking me up, which I ended up by chance becoming a co-author as serendipity and God likes to help with.
So was it popular? A lot of people bought the Virus Mania book?
Yeah, very much. Wow. Very popular. And lots of people still write to me and say, I've just found you. I've just started reading this book. It's changed my world. And it's been incredible. So when I started speaking out in 2020, I got fired from my job as a doctor. I got asked to leave and I got fired as a TV presenter. And what else? I got investigated by the medical council. They're still trying to come after me, like in New Zealand. And yeah, but it makes you stronger.
Yeah, it just makes you stronger. And Mark Bailey, you have been involved with researching microbiology, medical history for a long time, right?
Yeah, well, Patrick, I left medicine. I graduated in 1999 and was in the system until 2016. And in 2016, I became really dissatisfied with the allopathic medical system, and I'd always felt something was wrong with the whole setup. I was never comfortable, but in 2010, that kind of reached the point for me 2016, where I didn't want to work in the system anymore, so got out. And then for 4 years, I had nothing to do with medicine. I kept an eye on things just peripherally. And Sam kept up her research work and a couple of other jobs she was doing. And even though I was encouraging her since 2016 to get out of medicine, I said, you've got to get out. I think this whole thing, get out. It's terrible. It's there's something wrong with it to the core. And Sam was like, she's very much like, but if I stay in, I can improve things. And she did different things, like launched an online company to make it easier for people to do consultations. It was the first one in New Zealand, and really tried to work from within the system to make it better. But around end of 2019, when we heard this stuff coming out of Wuhan, we got suspicious and started reading some of the papers, the WHO reports, etc. And it also coincided end of 2019, 2020 with Sam launching her YouTube channel. And just by chance at that time, and before long, Sam was flooded with questions about this COVID-19. And we realized that instead of making these kind of generic medical videos, Sam said, I think we have to start answering all these questions. So in early 2020, I became the background researcher and just started learning as much as I could about the history of virology, how they did their laboratory work, PCR, genomics, etc. And the two of us just started answering the questions basically from the public. So, COVID kind of pulled me back into the world of medicine, but this time not as a practitioner and not as someone inside the system, but from someone outside the system who was able to critique it.
So what fun. Now you're together and you have homeschooling your kids and you just moved out in the country in New Zealand. It's a fairy tale life. I mean, come on. It's great.
It's great. Yeah. We love it. We are living exactly what we say is a good, healthy lifestyle, and we've really started living off the land as well. You'd love our setup here, Patrick. We've got a glass house. We've got an orchard. We've got our own water supply, and in a couple of weeks there should be some cows and chickens walking around.
Good for you. You're gonna have cows and chickens. What's the water supply? Is it a spring?
We have a bore, so it's not that deep here. It's about 15 meters down to the water table, and so we pretty much have unlimited water, so we can irrigate. There's plenty of water for the house. It's nice fresh water, so we're in total control of our water supply.
So you can drink it right out of you just drink it down, huh?
Yeah, it goes through. Before we were here, the property was beautifully set up with a pump house, and it's got all the equipment. It's got a 3-stage particulate filter system. Yep. Right. And we'll probably stick in our own reverse osmosis system, for the extra experts.
Yeah. I'm on rainwater here, and we just have some big filters, and then we do the ultraviolet light, in case there's any bird poop on the roof. But I've been doing that for 25 years. I really like it. It's really nice water.
Ours has an ultraviolet system as well. I'm not 100% convinced about what they do, because they're supposed to, kill germs.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Never thought of that.
But,
well, the whole germ thing. So I've been really anxious to ask you this question. As you may know or not know, in this country the last week, it's very timely, the Republicans, they're really going after China. Everybody got the memo. All the media people got the memo. And they are going to prove, they're going to say, we are going to prove that this COVID thing come from a leak in a lab in China, and they're the problem. Now, the people that we talk to, they believe this is more just about war with China, not, So my question is this. It's hard to ask the question because the whole virus thing is made up, but let's say if there was a molecule called a virus that could be breathed in, if there was, and then exchanged with somebody, contagion, if there was, could they make that in a lab, put it into the air as they're conjecturing, and people would get it and then exchange it with other people? Is that even possible?
Well, there's a one-word answer.
See, I was hoping this was the answer, but I thought so. I've been listening to Cowan. So you just can't do that, can you? Why couldn't you release some kind of thing that looks and smells and tastes like a virus? Why couldn't you do it?
Well, I think we have to be really specific about the science here.
Okay.
And contagion means that we have a disease that is transmitting between hosts via a microbe. So the microbe can be something that we do know exists, like bacteria or fungal species, etc. Or it can be this imaginary concept of a virus, which, we say doesn't exist.
Yes.
But the whole thing is that is what contagion is. It's not like dropping chemicals or substances and making someone sick. if they swallow it or inhale it. It is talking specifically about this passing on of something that's able to replicate. And what we say is that in all of the scientific literature, there's no evidence whatsoever that these particles exist in the way that they say they do. So there's no evidence of a particle that gets into someone, makes, starts replicating, and then passes on to someone else to make them sick. That doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist in all of their, quote, ordinary experiments, it certainly doesn't exist in a lab, gain of function, as they call it, setting. So that's basically what it comes down to. If they have evidence of this particle that replicates, then they need to demonstrate that, and they can't.
Is it the same principle that you all talk about, that you would have to isolate it, so they would have to come up with an isolated lab-made something that could be put into the air and people could breathe in and get sick and share the sickness?
Yeah, that's the other problem that we have with their definition of isolation, because it doesn't mean that they physically separate out a particle from everything else. When they say isolated, it could mean anything to a virologist. Sometimes they just mean they've taken a sample.
Yeah.
Other times they mean they did a PCR and found some genetic sequences. Sometimes they mean they put some cells in a test tube and added a sample, and the cells died, and therefore they must have isolated a virus. So they have all these unscientific terms to say that they've isolated a virus when they clearly haven't, because, as you know, if you look up the dictionary, to isolate something means to separate it from everything else.
Yeah.
So if they're claiming that they've done that, they need to show an experiment where that happens. But we know that not only can't they do this from, like, say, a human, they can't get a sample and find the, quote, viruses in there, but even in their own preposterous experiments and test tubes with cells and things, even then when they say they've got the, quote, virus, they can't isolate anything out of that physically either. So, yeah, and look, Patrick, we've dealt with this too, because everyone says, oh, but look, they isolated something here, but it's never a virus that they've isolated.
Never proven as an isolated virus. So, in theory, on the virus model that they sell, do they say that people exchange this virus or exchange this sickness that the virus allegedly causes?
The virus model says that, yeah.
They change the virus, Sam, is what they claim, correct?
Well, I think their whole thing, Patrick, is that they don't have what we call any direct evidence that this is taking place. So, like you kind of infer, they'll use something like saying, well, person X came down with the symptoms and we did a PCR or an antigen test, and then they went to the supermarket, and then person Y later on had a positive antigen test, and now we've put things together and we've worked out that this disease is passing around. But you can see that there are other explanations for that observation, but they continuously use these indirect measures to try and prove, in quotes, that there is a virus when they have nothing of the sort. And you can't claim that these tests show viruses, like whether it's a PCR or an antigen, because if you go to their papers, there's nowhere in that paper where they show that the genetic sequences for the PCR or the proteins for the antigen tests, there's nowhere where they show that these come from a particle that would be called a virus. So, instead they just go around doing these fishing expeditions saying, whoop, we tested the snot and we found some genetic sequences, therefore we've found the virus. And, we've just pointed out over and over again, this is not valid science.
Dr. Samantha, so would it safe to say on this March 1st day that we don't catch anything? We don't catch anything as humans? We don't catch anything? Is that too strong of a statement?
I think that's correct, because we don't. We can't. I mean, I think there are things that happen simultaneously in the environment. I do believe in resonance, and that you can be around people, if you're around negative psychological stress,
sure,
around, a partner or something, you can be influenced by that, but that's not the definition of contagion. And I think, of passing something between people. And it's the biggest thing that people have to get over. And it's the biggest question I always get is, but explain why we all got sick at the same time.
We all get sick. We all got the flu, right? It happens all the time.
And I don't think we've ever not denied that people get symptoms at the same time. But the reason that it's caused by a virus is wrong.
And I think, Patrick, we should say, and I mean, you've been investigating this for a few years now too.
Yes, sir.
That whenever they do one of these experiments where they try and pass something on between people, it doesn't work. In all of these laboratory settings, they get people to sneeze on each other, they stick snot up people's noses, they get people to swallow things, and hey presto, nothing happens, and then they have to resort to these most bizarre things like injecting things into people, or well, not usually people, into animals, or doing ridiculous experiments where they get super concentrated cultures of bacteria and inject them into some animal, which causes a reaction, and then claim that, wow, look at that's an infection, when hey, if it was contagious, just bring one monkey into the cage who has the alleged viral disease or other contagion, and shouldn't all of the monkeys get it? But they don't. The only way they get sick is when you put them all in a cage under the same conditions for weeks at a time. And we saw this from Robert Koch's original experiments, when they were coming up to, that sort of thing, is that the animals were only getting sick when you kept them in captivity for prolonged periods. And of course, they're all exposed to the same thing. So when they got TB, they said, wow, look at that, the animals are passing it on, when in fact, it was just the animals were all kept under the same conditions and eventually became sick in captivity.
So when they become sick, is it fair to say they're detoxifying from some sort of emotional or physical poisoning or chemical or something?
I think so. I think going through a healing crisis is detoxing essentially, and
healing crisis.
And the body's actually, by the time you have the symptoms, it's going through its healing, and then you're ready to go again.
I think one way to look at it, Patrick, is that say you swallow a poison or inhale it. Initially, you don't notice anything. You may have a half an hour, you may have a day, and you've actually become incredibly sick because you've been poisoned. But it's when the body tries to heal itself, that's when conventional medicine says, now you're sick at this point. Now you're sick. When in fact your body's now trying to heal itself, basically, and that can involve quite violent reactions, like with influenza, or with diarrhea and vomiting, or with skin eruptions, as the body just does its very best to detoxify.
So the idea. Go ahead, Sam. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for example, with fever, that was a classic. What you're taught at medical school is that fever is an indication of infection. And I remember, this whole process of learning about terrain theory is understanding that fever is this nature's bonfire for just really getting things going, getting things moving, allowing the detox to happen. And that in itself is a huge shift you have to make to appreciate that it's not a fever isn't a sign of infection. And I found personally this whole process from what we were taught at medical school, I'm unlearning all this stuff every day.
It's amazing that those of you that went to medical school, there are a few like yourselves and others, got out of there alive with understanding that the germ thing is just not true. I mean, after 6, 8 years of germs, the whole thing is built on germs, isn't it? It's built on germs.
It is, yeah, and we call it, you've probably heard terms like Rockefeller medicine,
right, sure.
Which seems to have, and it wasn't just the Rockefeller Institute. There are other factors as well, but perhaps people identify with the Rockefeller Institute more than others. But this whole system of what we call allopathic medicine, which is essentially using surgery and drugs to suppress symptoms, is the whole idea. When to us now, and we were trained in that way of thinking and in that way of practice, we now realize what a terrible mistake it is. And there are some aspects of surgery or other aspects of medicine which are absolutely fine. Like, we're not disputing the entire thing, but probably at least 80% of current allopathic medicine is actually quite destructive. And suppressing symptoms is one of the worst things you can do, because the body is trying its best to cure itself, and then at that point, if you stop the body trying to cure itself, you can suppress symptoms, but suddenly you end up in the long run with a much, much worse problem. You could end up with something like cancer.
Yeah. Dr. Sam and Mark Bailey are with us. We had 2 inches of global warming ice a couple weeks ago, and so our phone line is down. It broke, so you have to use... I love those global warming ice storms. They're great. Just email Patrick at One Radio Network. We're live here. If you have a question or a comment for the Baileys, Patrick at OneRadioNetwork.com. Another something I've been wanting to ask you too. So what about these pesky things called parasites? I mean, all of us in the natural community, we spent 20 years trying to kill these things. And I'm beginning to think, I don't know, maybe they know what they're doing. Do you think that parasites are there to try to help us as well?
I do.
Yeah.
You both do?
Yeah, definitely. There's interesting research about heavy metals, isn't it, Mike?
Or we're trying not to use the term. Metals, like toxic metals, because obviously, it's funny with heavy metals, Patrick, we should just say, because we obviously have heavy metals like iron, which are vital to...
Sure.
So I think this whole thing, when we say heavy metals, we can
toxic
sometimes...
metals you want to use, toxic.
But just call them toxic metals.
That's a good term.
But as Sam was saying, there's some evidence that when someone is infested with parasites, the parasites are actually there cleaning things up. And you can find concentrations of toxic metals and other toxins that are at higher concentrations inside the parasites than they are inside the human body. So
if you start using antiparasitics, like medicines...
Releases that.
Yeah.
How is it possible we got a $3 or $4 trillion thing that's just upside down? I mean, what's that about? Holy cow, man!
But I think so much of it, though, Patrick, is that it makes these treatments, treatments in inverted commas, they make people feel better, and so people think that they're working and they're good.
Yes, ma'am.
But they're not.
Yeah, because they kill the bacteria or the parasite, so they feel better for a bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, sorry, you go.
Yeah, I think the parasite issue, I think, Patrick, I think we all need to, and we will get round to it, because we've spent obviously the last 3 years and beyond just telling people that viruses don't exist, and you can never do it enough, because some people have to hear it 20 times before they go, wait a minute, maybe viruses don't exist. But the parasite thing is really interesting, and a lot of us are turning our attention to it, because we think, maybe these little critters are helping. And one thing we can say from the experience, and I'm sure you have this in North America as well, is that most parasites are associated with other problems in the living conditions. For instance, in our household, we've never really seen problems with any parasites, but we know that in some of the communities in New Zealand, which are very poor, they do have a lot of parasites, whether it's worms, scabies, etc. And often, virtually always, it's poor living conditions. So bedding that's not washed, basic hygiene measures that haven't been followed. And here we need to distinguish between hygiene versus, killing every single bug that you can see. Hygiene just means, simply keeping the body cleansed in every way from the inside.
So these parasites are trying to clean stuff up, or how do they get there, and what are they doing there?
Well, I think with a lot of things, they're everywhere, basically.
They're like spiders. You can't stop them. They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
And often they're in forms like, microbes can be in spores, and parasites can be in eggs, etc., that can live for an extremely long time or be viable for a long time. And often they're just on standby. They're like the firemen in the station. Most of the time they're not really doing anything. But once in a while the alarm goes off and they come out and get into action. And this is the interplay is just fascinating. Like, you might have heard of pleomorphism, which is the changing of the form of a microbe, such as a bacteria. And I mean, the mainstream admits that this does happen, but then they get all cagey about exactly why it happens, or they say it only happens in extremely limited circumstances. But we've come to understand that there's this incredible interplay that God's provided, where we have all these. Everything is driving towards life.
Yeah.
There's nothing that is driving towards death apart from terrible thoughts from humans, and which causes them to do silly actions and stuff. Once you understand that everything is for life, it's incredible. You get this real appreciation of, that everything is okay as long as you listen to nature's cues.
It's a beautiful idea. I look at it like divine spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, is always recreating itself, is always recreating itself to more new life. That's what it does, right? It's just more. And it's using us to do that. And as long as we just let it do it, we'll probably be fine, and don't try to kill anything. This killing stuff is not working, is it? It's not working.
No, well, we're always amazed at what do you need to start life on Earth is just seemingly just water. And wherever you go, if there's water, life soon follows, And some of these ridiculous conceptions about how life has come about, etc., just make no sense whatsoever. And, we can see now that it's this beautiful system.
We have a creek here, and sometimes we go through a big drought, and the spring will dry up, and then when it starts raining again, the spring starts going, and in 6 months there's all kinds of stuff in the water. I mean, where does it all come from? I mean, all kinds of creepy crawlies and snakes and all kinds of stuff. Where do they come from? It's great.
No, and I think, Patrick, that's one of the big things people don't understand about, in medicine they call it infectious diseases, but we think there's no such thing. We think it's just a misnomer, basically, is that if somebody gets pneumonia, they say, oh, look at that, Streptococcus pneumoniae, isolated from the lungs, and they truly do isolate it. They truly do find it. But we argue that it was always in there. It was always on standby. And what happened was that the terrain changed, like the lungs got some sort of insult. Maybe they got too cold. Maybe the person was stressed or malnourished. Maybe the lungs had absorbed some toxins and decided it needed to eject it out of the body. And what happens with that dead tissue is that the Streptococcus, which was always there, but just in very tiny numbers, suddenly comes to life and starts multiplying and proliferating. And that's how it works. It's not an invasion. It's not, you don't suck these things in and they attack you. They're your standby crew, ready to help.
So is it fair to say then you give an antibiotic and it kills the healing process, stops it, they feel better, but then the pneumonia, whatever thing, will come back because the body's going to work on the lungs again more? Yeah,
I personally believe too with antibiotics, all of them, they work by, they're very strong anti-inflammatory type drugs. I really believe that now, just seeing how they work. And we were taught, at medical school that these things, there are some medications, antibiotics that are anti-inflammatory, and that's why you'd use them for things like acne, and that's the mechanism of action. Right. But now I think actually most of them are, and they're toxic nuclear bombs to the body. It's I shouldn't say nuclear, but
big bombs,
big bombs, and it does. Yeah.
Well, I think too, the other thing, Patrick, and we challenged a microbiologist about this once, is if you do take antibiotics, where do the antibiotics actually go? Because say you have pneumonia, where are the bugs? The bugs are in the airways, okay? That's where they all are. There's billions of them in that petri dish inside your lungs there. Now, if you take the antibiotic's not going in there. It's not going into the air spaces.
They can't. It can only go in the blood.
Oh, it's only in the blood, of course, yeah. Wow.
It's in the blood and diffusing into the tissue, but it's not going into the airspace where all of the bugs actually are proliferating. So
how does that work?
And I said that to a microbiologist once. I said, I understand that you've got your petri dish and then you drop your antibiotic drops in the middle and say, hey, look, it killed the bugs. But I said, in the human body, that's not working, because where the bugs are, there's no antibiotic level, or it's very tiny compared to other places. So you take the antibiotic, it goes all through your blood, gets into your bowel, gets into your urinary tract and comes out in the urine. It's spreading everywhere, except it's hardly going anywhere where the actual bugs are. So it makes no sense that would be the life-saving thing. And then they start saying, oh, well, it stops them getting into the bloodstream and all of this kind of nonsense. And it just honestly now, I mean, we were trained to administer those sorts of
poison
pharmaceuticals. And now we just look at it and go, what were we thinking?
Yeah. But they do work, I think, in the way that they stop inflammation. But if you don't allow that to happen, then yes, it will make people, because the crucial idea is that you're not treating the underlying cause. What happened to that person? Why did they get the pneumonia? It's not the germ model, and so it's really looking at that. Why have they become sick? And it's teasing those things out. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think again it's that concept of that when the bacteria are there, the insult's already happened, the disease has already happened, and now the body is in its healing phase. Whereas the way allopathic medicine looks at it is it thinks that the disease is now full blown, and it thinks it's time to bring out the chemical sprays and the aggressive therapies and stuff, when we're saying, no, the insult's already happened, and now we just have to help the healing process.
So the antibiotics are not killing the bacteria that are trying to help? They're not killing them? Are they just anti-inflammatory, like Sam said?
No, sorry. They are killing bacteria that I think are indiscriminate. Like, I think there's not, there's again this myth of that antibiotics, you need the specific one that attacks a specific microbe. Our bodies aren't just one, we've got so many things, millions of things inside of us.
I think too, Patrick, to give you an understanding of how we were taught with medications, is that they talk about them as though they're very specific, that you take them and they go to the right place in the body and do a very specific action. So with antibiotics, like Sam was saying, they tell us that, oh, look at this, it gets into the right place, when we know it doesn't, it just goes everywhere, all throughout the body. And then they say it does this very specific action, it just acts on this particular bacteria or... I was
going to say, for example, penicillin only, that kills strep pneumoniae, the bacteria. That's what we're taught, and that's why you give that particular antibiotic. And if it doesn't improve the symptoms, then you need to switch antibiotics.
It must be resistant, they say. So let's get another.
You got to do a new one.
And just playing with the chemistry set until they get a certain reaction. And but these drugs are not specific, and this is not just antibiotics. This is all. So they say, oh, you've got high blood pressure, we'll give you this pill, and it acts on the receptor here, this beta receptor or this alpha receptor. And when you actually look into it, they're making all this stuff up. They don't know that that's what it does. All they know is that when they started giving these chemicals to people, they saw various reactions, like it might drop their blood pressure or drop their heart rate. And then they come up with a story about saying, well, here's a diagram of the cell and it's acting on this receptor and it's doing this. And when we were being taught, we thought this was all established science. We were like, wow, this is incredible. They know everything down to the molecule, and it's all solid science and stuff. And now we realize that they're putting chemicals into people and just observing reactions, and then they make up a backstory later. Wow,
it's amazing. Billy writes in, if you have an email question, our phones are out, Patrick at One Radio Network. Billy is in, I'm not sure where. I've seen some people on the internet that are arguing that perhaps the parasites are actually trying to eat up the cancer cells. Do you guys think that's possible?
I don't know about specifically that they do that, because we see parasites, in other circumstances where we can definitely identify problems, like say scabies we see when there's just poor hygiene in the home. So when the bedding's not being washed frequently, when the skin's not being cleansed, on a daily basis, etc. So, I mean, clearly in that stage, we've got parasites just doing superficial kind of cleanup work. So
I do think it's an important concept, though, what Billy mentioned, like the idea of cancer in itself, too, what you're taught it means in medical school is that it's to do with genes, that the genes aren't copying themselves correctly, and then it makes mistakes, and then it makes these rogue cells that start proliferating and forming a mass, and then it spreads around the body. That's the usual story. And realizing now that probably what cancer is basically it's when toxins can't be cleared from the body and they build up and they try and wall things off. So I guess if parasites were trying to clean up, if they do metals, toxic metals, potentially they could, but I haven't looked into the research for that. Yeah.
No, and I think we've also, on that hypothesis, we've got the problem of in first world countries where cancer is out of control. In many of these countries, the parasitic load is very low. And conversely, in the third world, where parasitic loads are high, we see much lower rates of cancer. Now, I'm not saying that you could look at it and say, well, that's because the parasites are cleaning up all the cancer, but we know that that there are other factors involved as to why people get toxic in that way. And the people in the third world, despite the fact that they're not getting sometimes the cancer rates that we do in the first world, they have a whole myriad of worse health issues and shorter life expectancies. So, yeah, I think I'm not saying that the parasites they definitely have some sort of role, and one of those end stage things, as Sam was saying, could be cancer if all of the interplays along the way are not looked after. But yeah, I think by itself, I wouldn't say that parasites could be responsible for cleaning up cancer.
We had a Dr. Thomas Seyfried on our show a couple of weeks ago. He's done quite a bit of work with cancer at Boston College, and he argued that this whole idea of a somatic mutation of genes, which is what they do, the cancer business, is just wrong. It's just wrong. There's no proof that this is the way it works. It's a lifestyle, dietary, stress thing.
Exactly, and this is what's shocking, Patrick, is that you realise they're all models, they're all stories, fairy stories that we've been told, just like germ theory. And you when you see it for the first time, you're like, this can't be right. This is too big, but it is.
No, and that's what he was saying. He said, people don't listen to us. He said, we do all this research and we can prove, that glucose and glutamine feed cancer cells, and they can prove it. But in the medical, they don't listen to him because they got their cancer thing, boy, and they're going to run with it.
I think one of the worst things that happened, Patrick, was, around the time when they were, quote, discovering DNA post-World War II, is that they came up with, you might have heard this, the central dogma of biology, or the central dogma of molecular biology, which gives this really ridiculous model, and it says that we have the DNA, and then that results in production of RNA, and then that produces proteins, okay? And they talk about it like it's a one-way street, that's you've got this code that's hardwired, that's the DNA, and it goes downstream. to make these proteins. And then they say, well, when you get cancer, something went wrong with the program, and DNA, you've got, like you were saying, you've got some genetic problem, and away it goes. Now you're dead. But the problem with that is that they knew straight away, and they shouldn't have let this dogma, and that's what it is. They shouldn't have let it permeate medical schools, and because that's the way we were taught things work, basically. But we know it doesn't. We know it works. This is a multi-directional system where people and organisms react to the environment, and then that feeds back in the other direction. So the actual DNA, the code, if you like, can be changed by reactions in the environment. And we had these great scientists like Barbara McClintock was looking at this work from as far back as the 1960s, I believe. She was showing that she could make in test tubes, she could change the DNA of cells in test tubes by just giving them different environmental conditions. So this sort of theory of, that things are in your genes and stuff and you can't do anything about it, they should have never let that one get off the ground. But like you say, because that's where all the lucrative research money is.
That's where it's at, right? Ooh,
this is where it's at. This is where the money's at for not only the research, but also the practice of oncology. So, and they say, well, that's bad luck. You got bad genes. And what they'll do is they'll say, hey, we did a test and we detected these genetic sequences, and that means that you might get cancer. And they're looking at it as a completely backwards way. They're not saying, look, there are lifestyle factors which can cause genetic changes. And that's the reason we pick up these sequences, because it's not like a piece of programming code, that just is acting by itself and goes bad. When we talk about genetics, we're talking about the whole organism, like the whole chromosomes and everything, and they're far more important, the way everything integrates together. So, it's like the PCR. It's crazy. It's like trying to look at these little genetic sequences and then saying that you've explained everything with these little genetic sequences rather than looking at the whole picture.
And I think, from a wider perspective,
Go ahead.
Philosophically, what happens is that all of these stories promote fear. It's driven. It's fear-based marketing, like cancer. It's this doomsday thing. People will do anything because they think this is the end for me, or I've got this infection. Give me what I need to do, otherwise I might die. It's all driven by fear, and fear is the petrol for stoking the fire of illness.
And we can only imagine what's going on in the body when somebody walks out of a cancer doctor's office and they said, you've got this or you got that, and they think about that and they're worried. I mean, there's no way to even compute how dangerous that is. I mean, there's no way. It's just not good. Not good.
Exactly. And you can see, small examples on another level with, say, for example, when you have a couple and one of them dies, unexpectedly, and then a few weeks later the other, husband or wife dies, and it's, from a grief reaction, and you think, well, how did that? They were perfectly well. What happened to them? And it's the fear, it's the distress, it's all this. We can't underestimate that effect on our bodies, on our souls.
Yes, ma'am. Can you stay right there? We're going to do a quick break, and we'll be back. We're getting some interesting emails in for you. We will see how you all respond to those. Stay right there. Dr. Mark and Sam Bailey, they're in New Zealand down there, where they got lots of lambs and cows and chickens and kids and having fun. This is OneRadioNetwork.com. It's fun to have kids and chickens. If you've ever thought about this technology we've been introduced to, I guess 3.5 years ago, and it's called molecular hydrogen. And you make hydrogen gas, and you breathe the gas, and you drink the water. And we have one of these little machines. We've been doing it for over 3 years, and I'm still living, so that's good. Now, I really like it. It doesn't kill anything because there's nothing to kill. It is a food, or I like to think of it as chi or mojo, or just juice from God, molecular hydrogen. The Japanese are way on top of their game as far as hydrogen technology. This machine that we promote, we think is the best available. It's made in Japan. It is pure food grade hydrogen. You breathe the gas with a little cannula, and you can drink the water. And who knows what your body will get up to once you give it a lot of good energy and food. That's what it is. People think, oh, if I get this, will I get rid of this? No, it's just going to help your body to get stronger, happier, and healthier. And then your body's going to figure it out, because we start messing around, as you know, with the body and telling it what to do. And that's always a black hole, and go down there and no telling. So check it out. It's on One Radio Network, and it's called Molecular Hydrogen on One Radio Network. And use promo code One Radio, and you get yourself 10% off, right? Cool. We've been working with this company for, gosh, how many years now? My goodness, probably 15 years at Daniel Vitalis, and this colostrum is on sale, and it's on sale. Use promo code Optimize. Use promo code Optimize, and you'll get 20% off. 20% off. Here, listen, I think this is Daniel. Daniel Vitalis, one of your flagship products, of course, the colostrum, which is easy to take, yummy, easy to get the kids to take. Talk a little bit about how it's necessary for the baby calves, but then also that it works for people.
Well, colostrum is the first food for all mammals. So all mammals produce colostrum before they produce milk. And that colostrum works not just in that animal, but it'll work across species and other animals too. And nowhere is this more true than with cows and human beings. Now, cows produce this surplus, which allows us to take a little bit of that and then turn it into this powder form, which is a fantastic food in smoothies and other confections and things like that. It has this ability to impart the immunity of the animal that it came from to us.
This is a pretty magical superfood, in my opinion, and Patrick's whole gut has continued to improve with more revolutions around the sun, and I've sure had my share of colostrum over the years. Wonderful superfood, and one of the best ones available today. Surthrival, any Surthrival link, colostrum, OneRadioNetwork.com. 20% off, use promo code Optimize, We've been using this product from Dr. Rulin Shu. She's a quantum physicist for, 3 or 4 years now. It's called Pearlsium. It's from living little pearls. These pearls are in a huge lakes that are tended by her family in China. And what they do is they show these pearls, sad movies. The pearls cry and make oysters cry and make pearls. I just made that part up. Yeah, but it's really nice to have a living food kind of thing. And you use this to brush your teeth, and then you can also take it internally. And it's a bunch of different minerals, heavy on calcium, but if you take it internally, because it's from a living source, pearls, it will put calcium into your little bones. Been proven to do that. Not like calcium in a cow. So you don't want to do that because you don't know where it goes. A lot of people think it ends up in the arteries. That's not good. Pearlsium from a living source. It's on One Radio Network. Brush your teeth, and then you can take it internally too. It's really, really a great product. It's on our website on OneRadioNetwork.com. And if I can find the right slide, I'll just bring it back up, and we'll bring them back on. We are having a good time talking to the Baileys, Mark and Samantha Bailey. Now, your websites, let's see. You both have your own website, or do you share websites? Share websites?
This is a standard joke between me and Mark, because I started this, right? Like I was nagged to get a website because I was like, oh, why do I need a website? Okay, I better sort one out. So I did one under my name because that's what I had the channel. And then one day we had a contact who was really like, met Mark and said, why aren't you there? Why aren't you talking? Why aren't you doing interviews? You're really good.
and I said, look, Sam started the channel. The audience has got this rapport with her, and she's built up this following. And I was just in the background. And but this film producer said, no. I said, you've got to get out there. You've got to be.
That's great.
He said, he said, I can see that you guys are such a tight team that you do everything together. And you need to present that to the public rather than have just Sam out the front all the time.
So then,
by then we'd already set up the website and stuff. But to be honest,
I created a page for Mark because I'm very generous.
I've got a page.
Give your own page. And I signed up. I think it's like $5 a month. I send Sam, and I get your little mailings, which is really cool. I like them. Yeah. And
Thank you, Patrick.
You guys answer all kinds of questions on YouTube. Do you get a lot of questions when you do? Do you do live streams or do you do?
No, I don't do live streams just because of, I think, the time zone, because we'd be on funny times as well. And we do a monthly Q&A, and people can send in whatever questions they want, and we try and just have a kind of a bit of fun and talk about things. Try and help people. Most of the content that we make is pretty much all free. It's just the monthly Q&As, and we just people get to watch our videos first if they sign up.
Yeah, and there is a bit of bonus material. So as Sam says, most of the work we do is provided for free, and it can be seen. There's not much on YouTube anymore because of the censorship, but we've got the Dr. Sam Bailey channel on Odyssey. All of the videos, all of the articles are up at drsambailey.com. And as Sam says, the benefit of being a $5 a month subscriber is that you get early access to the videos, you get the monthly Q&As in which you can ask your own questions, and there's also a little bit of bonus material, a few downloads that you can access. And people find it's pretty good value, but people are also welcome to just look at the stuff for free.
Most of the things have moved to Odyssey from YouTube. That's going to be your main thing.
Yeah. It has been. Yeah, like I get asked. I was even emailed the other day by Rumble, someone from Rumble going, and I've got a Rumble channel actually, but to be honest, I don't trust a lot of the platforms because of that idea that potentially that could be bought out. Odyssey, I feel very safe with because it's built on that blockchain model. And they've been good to me. I've stuck with them, and I feel really happy with but it's annoying for people because I know there's all these different platforms, and it's like, where do you find people? That's what I found BitChute. I don't know what your thoughts are, Patrick, on BitChute.
I do okay, but I'm small potatoes compared to you guys. You guys are like rock stars. I'm just, I just
but you've got the voice, Patrick. You've got the best voice ever.
I'm trying to get out of here and produce movies. That's my next job.
Yeah.
But they won't let me out. It's like, that's what I'm trying to do. That's where I'm going next, is to produce movies. So this is a good question. This is from Frank. Patrick had a guest on. I think you've been on his show, Steve Falconer. Steve?
Yeah.
He's crazy. I love Steve. He's just a ball of fire. And Steve was talking about that he felt like ivermectin and was not all it's cracked up to be. And this Frank wants to know, do you agree with Steve Falconer saying that this ivermectin could be dangerous? And Patrick had another guest that said, no, it's okay. People are just overdosing, and that's why it's dangerous. What's your take, you two?
Sorry, we'll both say something because I know Mark will want to say something about this. But I think from our perspective, we deal with everything upstream. So we say, why would you use ivermectin if there is no such thing as a virus? Even with, and especially for, so-called COVID. I personally think it's dangerous. I don't think people should take it. I think it's buying into the big pharma model again. It's not like with all the stuff, even like what you're talking about earlier with Patrick, with the war kind of with China, the gain of function stuff, it all feeds into this alternative narrative that keeps people on the plantation. And that's what I don't like about it, is it actually stops people from seeing really what's going on. And I don't see there being any use for ivermectin personally. Mm-hmm. And it is toxic and high. People have overdosed on them. And, young people have found their parents' supplies of ivermectin because of all the stockpiling going on because of fear, and overdosed and died. And it's a chemical. It's not supposed to be in our bodies. But what do you think, mate?
Yeah, I think the whole problem, Patrick, when they started saying that ivermectin is, effective for COVID-19, as soon as, like Sam says, we deal with the upstream problem, we're like, what is COVID-19? It's not a specific disease entity. It's
Right.
defined solely by these bogus tests like PCR and the antigen test. So instantly, as soon as we started reading one of those papers, we'd say, well, that's the whole premise falls down, because you're not dealing with a specific condition here. So what exactly do they think they're treating with the ivermectin? So, but then of course it may have effects, like they may compare it to something else and say, well, we used protocol 1 with ivermectin and that was better than protocol 2 that didn't have ivermectin. And we just argue that you'd be better off not using either of those protocols and sticking to, underlying natural kind of remedies, and treating whatever the underlying problem actually is. So nobody has an ivermectin deficiency. That's not a thing. Like, you could be deficient in vitamin D, you could be deficient in zinc, and you could get sick for these purposes, for these reasons. But no one has a deficiency of ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or any of these synthetic chemicals. They're not required. So, and yes, we have dealt with, because people might be saying in the audience, well, hey, I've seen studies that came out of Monash in Australia showing that it is an antiviral medication. But we've done detailed analysis of those kind of studies and talked about that before. When you have a test tube and you're looking at things like RNA or other markers that you can detect in your experiment, adding chemicals like ivermectin and then saying, hey, look at this, we've got less RNA in the tube, and that must mean that it's stopping the quote virus from replicating. But we're saying there is no virus. There's just nucleic acid sequences. And if you mix around chemicals in the test tube, yes, you get different results for another reason. So, we've looked at it from the basic science stuff, from their actual evidence that they're trying to present, through to the more holistic considerations. And I would say I cannot see a reason why anybody should take ivermectin. And historically it was produced as an antiparasitic agent, but for the reasons we talked about earlier, it's more important to look at why the parasites are there in the first place. So if it does appear to be giving some benefit through the antiparasitic effect, we say it's more important to deal with the underlying condition as to why the parasites are there in the first place.
Right. So do you think, though, if a dog or somebody has heartworms, that you could use ivermectin as just a fail-safe to get rid of those if you used them properly? I mean, it's still a chemical, as Sam says, though, right? That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still be trying to figure out
Why.
I mean, I guess you could use it, but it's just, I like Mark says, I think you've got to find out what's happening with the dog, what's the diet, what's going on in the environment, what's, you've got to think about everything. And it's like plants. It's the same as that. Yes, you can spray plants with chemicals and it will get rid of fungus and whatever else on there, but often there's a major problem with the soil, the plant health, and you just it's basically putting band-aids over things without figuring out what's going on. And I think of animals like dogs, and they're God's creatures. We have to look after them and help them. And I feel guilty. I don't want to give them chemicals.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my belief.
I have a girl lying right here next to me, and I'm with you. This is from Judy. Could you ask your guest if they believe in the human genome and DNA as it is presented to us from mainstream science, and what is the difference between the two? I've thought for years that just sitting, maybe it's just another scam of them saying that they could identify us that way, not only as a fingerprint ID scam, but maybe they needed something more confusing, especially in light of what's going on, the DNA.
Yeah, well, genome just means all of the genetic material within an organism. So for a human, we have DNA, and the human genome simply refers to the billions of nucleic acid sequences that we have inside us. But so that term is okay, but it has been completely misrepresented. So as we talked about a bit earlier, you don't have like a snapshot of your genome where you can say, hey, yep, that's the entire stretch from A to Z, which codes for this particular person, because it's a dynamic system. So the sequences could vary depending on which sample you take in the body. For instance, we know that some cells will have changes in their DNA, but it doesn't suddenly change every single, it doesn't change all billions and billions of cells all at once. Mm-hmm. We also know that, as I talked about earlier, environmental changes, there can be changes in the DNA sequences themselves. So, this is not something that's unknown even to mainstream medicine, although they try and present it often, and the public get the impression that you have this computer code that you get at birth, and that's the one you're stuck with.
Yeah.
And if you have some sort of cancer in there, a rogue genetic code, is in big trouble, that will kill you one day. All of this stuff is completely false. So, yeah, we have no problem with the concept of
I think their internet froze up.
And what gets really, really confusing, Patrick, is that when we, at any one time, on us and inside us, there's a couple of pounds of microbes, like bacteria, fungal species, etc., and we can't live without them. So
are they part of our genetic, part of our...
They're part of us, right?
So if you go looking for bits of genetic code, you'll find what they say are bacterial nucleic acid sequences. But we can't live without those bacteria. So I think this is where it gets all artificial. They try and look at a human and say, this is human, this is not human, this is human, this is environment, when we can't live without the integration, without the working together of everything. So, they did these experiments last century with animals like cows, and they tried to raise them in completely sterile conditions, and they can only live for a couple of weeks. They're dead. Doesn't matter how much food they give them and water and all this kind of stuff. If they don't have the bugs on them, they simply die. So yeah, we've got, I think with the genetic stuff, it's really dangerous what's happened, because they upload all these sequences onto databases and the classifications are all over the show. And this is the problem we have with the, quote, viral genomes, is that they're not coming from viral particles. They're just coming from organisms like humans and other animals and found in the environment. And then because of their way they've put these databases together, whenever they find one of these sequences, they say, oh, we found this, we found a virus, or we found this. And no, you're just finding life on our planet is what you're finding.
Well, if you don't mind me waxing spiritually for a moment, which I like to do, big picture, I would argue, can't prove it, but it's all God. It's all one, right? So there is no separate. The idea of we're separate from something, to me, is an illusion. It just is an illusion. Just not true. I mean, show me something we're separate from.
Yeah.
Well,
Stars,
totally.
moon, cows, pigs, chickens, plants. We're just not, we're just not.
Totally. And I think we know from people that have been isolated, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, is that it's so hard to live, like trying to separate yourself from the rest of the world. It's almost it's basically impossible to be healthy that way.
Here's one from Linda. She wants to know about Dr. Brownstein's protocol. She had a niece that had difficulty breathing and had what was the media called new COVID. Oh, the new COVID. And so she did high-dose vitamin C, vitamin D, all these things, a couple drops of blue gauze iodine, and then she nebulized hydrogen peroxide, and she got well. So how can the Baileys explain this if these, how can they explain this if the virus doesn't exist? And when Brownstein's protocols worked on so many.
Yeah, I guess it's what if COVID doesn't exist? What is COVID? it's this. They don't even have the definition of it is that it's a PCR test, like Mike said. It's not got any standard signs or symptoms for it. So
right.
We're never denying that people don't get sick, they don't get illnesses. You don't get a sore throat or a headache or cough or whatever, but it's not caused by a virus. It's usually the body detoxing is what's going on.
Yeah, I would say, with that question, there's nothing in that story that even remotely comes close to requiring the existence of a virus. I mean, the therapies were based on giving some vitamins, etc. The nebulized hydrogen peroxide, I mean, that could have all sorts of effects, but I presume, I'm not familiar with this protocol, but I presume it's supposed to kill things in the respiratory tract, which is probably a bad idea. But the very act of nebulizing something and doing that kind of exercise has plenty of other effects as well, with the lungs, getting them moving and stuff. So no, what we're saying is that if you go to all of the science that they've produced, there is no evidence anywhere that there are these particles, pathogenic viruses that exist, and they simply can't show that. So we have to forget about looking at that as the boogeyman for why people get sick. People get sick for other reasons, and certainly some of these protocols can work. But I would also argue, Patrick, that sure, it can be good for people to take some vitamin C capsules or vitamin D capsules, but we don't usually even advise that. We would say, if you think you're vitamin C deficient, you should go to citrus and
have some
other
orange juice.
sources.
Exactly,
Totally.
Yeah.
Make sure it's organic and all that kind of stuff. So all of these things can usually be, pretty much always be addressed by just taking care of dietary and other factors. And it's actually a good time to introduce, why people get sick, because I mean, we've done dozens of videos showing why viruses don't exist. I've written a 29,000 word essay, incredibly detailed, going through the evidence that they've presented. My essay, Farewell to Virology, outlining. So we've been through all that. It's funny because sometimes last year, I remember we were having a conference call with Tom Cowan and Andy Kaufman and Mike Stone and etc. And I think Tom said, "Are we still dealing with this virus then?"
That's right. He always says that. He said, "Are we still doing this? What else are we going to do?"
Yeah, can't we move on? And we want to say, we don't say this enough to our audience, but if we want to look at why people get sick, it comes down to some really basic principles, and usually it's a dietary problem. Like either most people in the first world eating too much, as simple as that. Too many calories. People are overweight. Once you're overweight, you have a plethora of issues that are going to develop. Two, people are malnourished in the sense that despite they're getting all these calories, they're actually nutrient deficient often because they don't realize. Like, we did an analysis last year of a
Domino's pizza.
Did you really?
And we found they produced a pizza, Patrick, that had no vitamin C. They managed to get every drop
with
of vitamin
cheese and
C.
everything on there. How do they do that?
Everything. We don't know how they did it, but they managed to. And this is the thing. So someone has a pizza for lunch and thinks, "Oh yeah, I've got a bit of this."
There's some capsicum in there,
but they're getting nothing. No. So that's the other problem, is that despite they're eating all these calories, they're not getting the nutrients. The next problem is lack of exercise, and that's more than just a weight thing. Because people think, well, I'm normal weight, so I don't need to exercise. No, the body is designed to move and needs to do that. So exercise is very important, and it needs to be stressed a little bit. Like, it's no good sitting in an office all day where your heart rate never has to go above 60 or 70. You want to get that heart rate up over 100 sometimes, get it moving, get that heart strengthened, etc. And then the fourth major aspect is just negative thoughts and poor psychological situation.
Right, I think that's right on the top for what that's worth.
I agree with
and
completely.
And Patrick, how many people do you meet? Like, what Sam and I do, we don't even call this work. We just say this is life, what we do, and we love it. But the amount of people who all they think about is when their next holiday is, or when the weekend is. And
they're crossing off the days on the calendar, and they're just...
Or they're looking at their financial statements they're stressed out of their mind saying, how am I going to make these moves?
And I buy this lotto ticket and that's going to change my life. And it's...
So this is hugely underestimated, that most people, unfortunately, in the modern era, are desperately unhappy. And when we talk to people and say, do you like what you do? Most of them are like, not really. I like going home. I like doing something else. I don't. So you think most of the week people are not actually happy doing what they do. And this kind of negative thinking creates all sorts of problems, which ends up creating physical ones.
And this really lends to this idea that this is a spiritual thing that's going on, right? This is God's way, in my opinion, of saying to soul, wake up, smell the coffee here, because if you're not happy, and if you're tired of getting sick, you're going to need to do something differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Patrick. And I think it's God's way of. I like in the analogy of it's like a volume control. Yeah. And you ignore it, and then it gets louder, and until you can't ignore it anymore. And I think the psychological aspect is so important, and it's highly linked with the spiritual too.
Very much.
Spiritual health is incredibly important, and we almost dismiss that as that's crazy, but it really keeps you centered, and you have a beacon of hope of what you're living your life by. And
the tragedy, and we've really seen this in the last 3 years, is to blame a boogeyman that's just an invention in someone's mind.
Of us, right? Yeah.
Totally. And then people think, the reason I got sick was that I got, quote, COVID, and, or the Chinese, they made this virus and it got out, and that's the reason we've got all these problems. And that kind of thinking is totally unhealthy, totally destructive. And people, you have to accept that no matter what happens, no matter what condition you end up getting your body into, you have to wake up and say, I have to take responsibility for what happened. And people might say, well, I didn't know my city had dirty water or the air was toxic. Well, you have to investigate these things, because, we've been there too. We used to drink the tap water in the city and think it was okay. Oh. Yeah. Going back a few years, and because we were told it's really great water, it's all tested, And it wasn't until we did our own investigations that we said, hey, don't drink that water. That's not good. Or similarly with certain products that you could buy in the supermarket, we just stopped using them completely because we realized that they weren't organic products and they weren't particularly safe. So, anyone can, and it's the same when your children get sick. You have to take responsibility and say, as the parent or caregiver, you have to say, hey, I've missed something here. I've been negligent. And people say, no, my child got measles or chickenpox because of X, Y, and Z, or because they didn't have a vaccine, or all this kind of excuses they're making up. And it's not that at all. It's basically negligence. And I know it sounds harsh, but you have to keep working on your game and working out how to improve your health.
Well, we are definitely being called upon to up our game, right? Just to thrive and survive on the earth plane right now. It's pretty challenging. I can remember 60 years ago, maybe 65 years ago when I was in grade school, or maybe 70 years ago. Wow. We got sick, and my mom would give us a big slug of castor oil, put us in bed, pile blankets on top of us, right? And we would just sweat all night long. We'd get up, poop like there was no tomorrow. She said, you're good, you're going to school. That's the way she dealt with it.
I love your mom.
Yeah, my mom, they knew it. Isn't it amazing she knew all this back then? Where did she get out there? Where did she get that? It's like great.
I know, and all that stuff's been forgotten as well. It's so important. And like what the person that's asking the question, one of the big things I think was missing in that particular protocol was fasting. It's when you get sick, one of the first things you should do is stop eating.
Right.
Yeah, and that's been forgotten. And I think this is what we're trying to do with the videos as well, is really try and focus on the core things that lead to good health. And these are simple practices. They don't cost money, but it's just this has been lost, this wisdom time that your mum knew about.
And it's really interesting, Patrick, because really what your mother was doing, whether she was completely aware of it or not, was she was encouraging the body just to eliminate.
Yeah.
So she was saying, let's just let the fever go, because that's the way the skin is going to get rid of some of these toxins. She's like, let's get the bowels moving. Let's do a big flush out. She's, probably reducing what you were eating, because she said, no, we don't need your guts distracted with working to digest food. We need to go into elimination phase. So, reduces the amount of food you're eating and just allows the body to rest for 24 hours to have that flush out. So totally. Whereas these days, people would give their children Tylenol and go, oh, look at that, I've reduced the fever. Haven't I done well? And, you better eat lots of food because you need your strength, etc. And it's all backwards thinking, making the child even more sick. So, and also, those kind of episodes are often warnings to say, well, what did I feed the kids recently? Or what have we been doing that might have led to this episode? And it's that whole reflection process of continuously looking to improve health.
And another thing really quickly, Patrick, which I've been really thinking about lately is, this idea of young children, our kids. So our youngest, who's 18 months, he's never gone to preschool or daycare, whatever. I think they're really toxic places, actually. And I know people do it so that they can get there, so they can go to work. I understand the practical aspect of it.
Yeah.
But they're stressful. They're very, very stressful for children. And I honestly think that that's why they get so sick. They get constant, ear infections and rashes and all the detoxing. And I honestly think they're just stressed out of their minds, and it's not good for them. And
it's like Sam says, our youngest is 18 months old, and he doesn't have a constant runny nose like lots of these kids and stuff. And people would say, oh, that's because he's not in daycare or kindy or whatever. But he's still coming into contact with other little kids.
Yeah.
And what they're like. They're swapping toys and sticking things in their mouth. And he's not, we see friends who have kids who go to these daycares and like their nose just doesn't stop running. There's constantly, they're getting rashes, which are put down to, quote, viruses and all this kind of stuff. And we just think you can actually avoid that just by keeping the child in a healthy environment where they're not constantly stressed out, because they try and make out that all of these childhood illnesses are normal, that it's just part of growing up and stuff. They're not.
Yeah, that's right.
It means when your kid's getting a runny nose continuously, it means that they're trying to get rid of something. Something's going wrong. Or when they're getting constant breakouts of rashes, and which are put down to little infections and stuff. No, again, it's the body trying to eliminate something.
So measles and mumps, the body is trying to just let go of something. They didn't catch anything, correct?
No.
Correct, yeah. And over time, we have to say in the last 100 years, these diseases, and this has nothing to do with vaccines, because we know from the excellent work that
Roman Bastrianic and from Dissolving Illusions.
Great work that him and Susan Humphreys did, just showing that these diseases were way on the decline anyway. And we have a problem with the fact that they call them specific diseases, because we don't think they are. Measles, monkeypox, chickenpox, smallpox. It's all just the skin reacting and trying to get rid of something. And what you call it depends on whatever time zone that you live in at the time. Is it 1950 or is it the year 2000, etc. And whatever kind of often unvalidated test that they might be using. So all of these things are just variations of the body's, just elimination systems at play. But regardless of that, even if people do think that they are specific conditions, we could see that the measles was disappearing basically anyway, without the introduction of any vaccines or anything like that. So, and in general, everything just got milder and milder. And when I was a kid, there was some chickenpox around, but now that's almost disappeared. And that's not because of vaccines, because a lot of countries don't have chickenpox vaccines or didn't have them until very recently. And even so, they were basically disappearing.
We'll take a couple more emails before we will let you go and take on your day there. Thanks for being committed to bringing light to this pertinent topic. Sam's recent videos covering Project Veritas is a much watch for those who still battle between is there a it or not. The simple fact that Team Terrain continues to be ignored by the mainstream media is a clue. I cannot fathom how really intelligent and critically thinking individuals do not see the importance of a minimum, a public discussion based on evidence and reason surrounding that which actually creates diseases and that which is a myth. Thanks for your efforts. I appreciate your work. Oh, that's a nice thing.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw your video.
Nice.
Project Veritas thing was a cool thing, right?
Yeah. And we think, Patrick, the problem has been is that the disputes have been within the freedom community, and we're encountering censorship with other people within the freedom community. But it's hit a very interesting point, because more and more people are contacting us who said, hey, I've just become aware of this kind of no virus thing and no contagion, and my audience has been pressuring me for weeks now, and initially I didn't think there was much to it, but I can see that this is actually pretty advanced and that people have been working on this for years. Not only people like us and Andy and Tom, etc., but also Stephen Lanker and Kevin Corbett and the Perth group, who have been doing this stuff for decades. And I think that's good. So I think we're getting to the tipping point within the freedom community, where a lot of these people who have been against all of the COVID measures, etc., but who still insist that there is a virus, are starting to find this is catching up with them now, and they have to deal with this issue.
And the audience is demanding it, which I think people should, is actually saying, please look into this issue, don't ignore it anymore.
And we just say to the people in the freedom community who are pushing forward the virus stuff, is saying, well, are you prepared to defend this kind of pseudoscience? Which representatives are you putting forward?
Is it Fauci?
to defend this stuff. So,
Fauci.
And there's some stuff brewing in the background, Patrick, which could be quite interesting. Some high profile people in the freedom community are finding that they're going to have to deal with this issue probably in the next couple of months before it blows up.
Wow.
So so once we can get beyond that, then we can start cracking into the mainstream, because we know what the mainstream are doing. They are 100% ignoring this. And, we noticed that in the early days, they would write smear articles about Sam. So in 2020, 2021, they'd write a smear article. These days, like we saw a fact check recently, Sam did a fantastic video on polio and the criminal Rockefeller fraud. It was an essay written by F. William Engel.
Oh, we know him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we used to have him on. He's great.
He's fantastic.
He's amazing.
And anyway, they did this fact check video, because obviously the video is spreading too much on social media. And it was really interesting in the fact check, because they didn't mention Sam at all. They didn't mention her name or link any websites. They didn't mention William's name or link to any of his work. They just said there's a video about polio and it's not true, da-da-da. They didn't address any of the science that had been raised by the work.
In that video in particular, Patrick, it was taken, I tried posting it on YouTube just to see what would happen, and it was struck down in 6 minutes.
So,
in 6 minutes?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Take it off. I was like, because people were watching it. It was like a 30-minute or 27-minute video, I think, and then they were 6 minutes in. It got taken down.
But to us, Patrick, that's a great sign that they've gone from smearing to these days they don't want to mention Sam Bailey, they don't want to mention Tom Cowan, Andy Kaufman, etc., Kevin Corbett. They just completely are not mentioning the names anymore, which to us is great, because
why do you
they know
think that is? Why do you think that they're leaving off the names now? Why is that a good sign?
Well,
don't quite.
I think the initial smear campaigns didn't work, because what happened was when they would do these smear articles, we'd find that it would just drive traffic to the work. So, and Sam was even getting generous donations from people.
Like I'd have a stuff media, like an article, which is one of the main kind of news outlets in New Zealand, would do a big smear on me, and then I'd have all these people like trying to give me donations and support, and they're like, how can I help you? I didn't know about you until now, and now they don't mention me at all.
That's right.
And I
want you to help you raise
I think also I think what happened too, Patrick, was in 2020 they thought, hey, we can write a smear article about Andy Kaufman and everyone will start ignoring him, or we can do a big feature on Sam Bailey and how she's a doctor fallen from grace and all this kind of stuff. And they thought that'll get rid of these guys, we won't have to hear from them. It didn't work. And what happened is that as our position has developed and we've just produced more and more work, including detailed essays, etc., it's got too big for them to deal with. So that's why I think it's good that they're ignored. They do not want people knowing about this stuff. And obviously in the freedom community, pretty much everyone knows about it now, that the no virus is a big issue.
But I still think it's important that people encourage, those that haven't looked into it, because I think that's often the big problem is that people say, no, that can't be right. This has all been established. And they haven't actually looked at it. And when you ask them, have you looked at it? Have you read? I mean, Marxie say it's this is not something that's just a minor, blip in or flash in the pan or whatever. It's major.
Yeah.
I think.
And where can people get that? Where can people get that essay? Make sure they can find that. That's huge, right? 78 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my website. It's you can search for it, but it's just a farewell to virology.
Farewell
is what it's called. It is a bit technical, and that's why we called it expert edition. It's not to try and put people off. It's just to say it is quite technical in places, but just if you can read it, if you have a look, there's Mark's done it. It's an unbelievable work that you've done.
Yeah, and I think. But Patrick, it's for the average person who's just new to this, it would be an incredibly heavy read at 29,000 words. But that's why Sam has lots of 15-minute videos just going over stuff like people might say, well, what about electron microscopy? I think I've seen pictures of the quote virus, and Sam will have a 15-minute video just dealing with electron microscopy.
Good for you. That's
or people
great.
Would say, but there's the PCR, doesn't that detect COVID? Okay, there's a 12-minute video just going over the problems with that whole setup. Or, people say, but I've had COVID. There's a 11-minute video just going on about what did they experience? COVID. Yeah. What is the problem with that? Why is it not? So it's really just putting things in these digestible pieces so it's not overwhelming for people. But I think we can reassure the audience that there are many of us who have dedicated years and years of reading through all of these scientific papers, like between myself, Kevin Corbett, Mike Stone, Stefan Lanka, Andy, Tom, all of these guys, we've spent years now reading these papers in great detail, like reading all the citations and stuff, making sure we're not missing anything. And between the wider group, if we've missed something, I'd be incredibly surprised. I don't think virology has any secret books or papers that, because people will say to us, people will say, but look at this paper. I found this paper from 2021. And no, we've seen that one. One of us has usually read it or done an analysis of it. And it's got to the point, we're pretty sure we haven't left any of these stones unturned.
I'd love to do a movie someday on Pasteur. And, he started all this nonsense, didn't he? He really did. When you love to get the real story about what went on there, boy, that'd be great. Whew, man.
I know.
Both of you are beautiful, and have beautiful skin. Can you share a few reasons why you have beautiful skin? Well, they kiss a lot and they make babies. That's why.
Well, I don't know. We've got. We were a bit worried actually this morning because we're in this new house and. We tried to set up one of the cameras on Sam's computer over there, and it was doing really strange things with the lighting, and so we're still
you look great.
Getting that ready. So hopefully the skin looks okay. But I think, Patrick, with skin, my basic rule is that you don't mess with it. You put water on it. You take care of it in that way. You get a little bit of sun. And essentially, it will reflect what's on the inside. So if you've got a great diet, if you've got a good way of life, then it will manifest. And Sam said that during the break before. She said, my God, Patrick looks great. So.
You do, Patrick. I was thinking you look amazing. Just youthful and healthy.
I feel good.
Yeah,
I'm going to have 77 by my age, next in a few months.
Believe that.
Seriously.
Are you joking? You're
No.
not 20 years younger than that. Seriously.
I got a whole I have a book that I'm working on called It Takes a Long Time to Get Young. It takes a long time to get young. And I have a screenplay too. And I think it's all made up. I think the whole age thing is a scam. I think it's just made up. Seriously. I think it's all, if you believe you're going to age, you're going to age. And if you believe in time, then you're going to age. And so that's my take on it. Yeah, well, thanks. I feel good. Yeah.
We saw our real estate agent the other day,
right.
That we bought the house of, and he's 57, and Mark's like,
Yeah, he looks. I'd say he looks older than you, Patrick. Just about.
Yeah.
And just these differences that you see between people, but I think it is like a manifestation of. I
believe it is. Whatever we believe to be true, I really think it is. I do some out of body work. When my body's sleeping, and I've seen some things that are, whoa. I'll talk to you about them someday. But I've seen that every, like this, every thought, every feeling, every image that we as a soul buy into is real, that it's in the body at that moment. And it's in the body until we say, no, that's not true. Okay. And then it's gone. Because it's just a now kind of hologram thing. I know this gets a little geeky, but that's the way I like to think about this stuff.
No, that it reminds me of some of Eckhart Tolle's teaching. It's very much like that as well, about how we can simply decide when to let something go. We don't have to hold on to unhealthy thoughts or whatever. We can just say it's time to go.
I'm done. Yeah.
Yep.
Another thing I really like is about forgiveness, and I think we hold on to this resentment, and forgiveness is I listen sometimes to Derek Prince, and he says about it's a decision, it's not an emotion, and I like that you can actually just, like you say, you just decide, no, that's gone now, I'm going to forgive the person or whatever, and it lifts you, then you don't hold on to anything.
And I think forgiving ourselves and loving ourselves is like top of the list. I walk around saying, I love you. I'm going to start crying. I love you, Patrick. You're doing good. God love you. God loves you. I love you. You're doing fine. And I think it's important, for me. I couldn't live without it, thinking like that.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah. I know we probably are the cruelest to ourselves, aren't we? And you're right. Forgiving yourself and going, actually, I'm doing it. I'm awesome. I'm
awesome. I do that. I go to sleep at night and I talk to God and say, I'm doing good. You know what I'm saying? We are too. Look at what we're working with out here. Earth is bonkers. For us to be able to do what we're doing and have a good life and be healthy, I think we're doing great. I'm all in.
Yeah.
I think, Patrick, we just rise to whatever happens. And people say to us, this could get a whole lot worse, this situation. And we say, sure. But, it's not time to, get negative about things. It's the opposite. It's time to say, well, we'll lift it again and we'll just keep lifting it. And, in 2020, when they really came after Sam and she was fired from TV and the authorities tried to start a prosecution against her, and then she got kicked out of her research facility that she was working at. All this kind of stuff happened all at once. And at the time, we thought, oh, this is just terrible. This is so bad. How's this? And now we look back and say, what a blessing. Yeah. It was like time to move forward and lift our game even further. And we realized that a lot of the things we were doing and were involved with, we could just get out of and start this new. We don't even call it work anymore, what we do.
Yeah, it's
fun,
love
right?
it. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you guys, and as you know, Spirit is just going to put you wherever it wants you to be. And even if it's a little uncomfortable, it will say, well, what's going on? Wait a minute, I don't do it. Just go with it. Go with the flow, man. And she's going to take it.
When I was at university or as a postgrad doing medical stuff, I would have to write like maybe a 3,000 word essay, and it seemed so painful, Patrick. I'd be like, 3,000 words. And And, you'd be sitting there counting the words, just go. And then when I wrote a farewell to virology, 30,000 words just spilled straight out. And it wasn't, it didn't feel like work. And that's, there's 200 references, scientific references and other references in that paper. And to me, it was just like, well, this is what I do. It's not, I wasn't submitting it for a grade or to get a certain ticket or whatever. I was just saying that I think the world needs this essay to be published, and I'm going to do it.
Couple more here. I keep saying couple more, and they keep coming in. Given that virology is turning out to be a fraudulent as well as what we base allopathic medicine on, have the Baileys given thought to how different economies could be remodeled if we drop the whole allopathic and germ theory model? It would change dramatically.
It would, and I think it's a big question, but one thing we don't really like to do is speculate too much about what it's like. Sometimes when people ask, what would be the Ministry of Health if you could organise it? I'm like, I don't want to do that. I think when it's just I think it comes from individuals, and I do believe in the concept of health practitioners, but I think the GP model is completely broken, and the hospital model. And I don't know. What do you think, Mark? I don't see it as like a...
Yeah, well, one of the subtitle in Sam's book, Virus Mania, is basically how the entire medical industry just consumes billions of dollars from the public every year. Yeah. It's basically a vast system of wealth transfer, taking money from people, whether it's through private payments or through taxes or through insurance, to channel into this machine, which is basically an all-consuming, disgusting machine of allopathic medicine, which, is used then to launch wars against the public, whether it's making them wear face masks or take experimental products, etc. And it is. The whole economy of allopathic medicine is terrible and it's incredibly harmful as well, because then we have all these interventions that it does that makes people even sicker. So then people lose productive time. You get negativity, like we were talking about earlier. People think that there's external causes for why they got unwell. So the damage, I mean, we'd economically we'd be looking at something completely different, but obviously we need to get out of the economic system as well.
Change that one. Looks like that's going to change whether we like it or not. Who's going to go?
Oh, yeah.
Man, and, what's happening with the money is crazy,
Totally, yeah. And if people understand that virology is as fraudulent as the financial system, they're basically comparable in terms of
the lies
that go on, and how very few at the top benefit from the expense of the majority. So, it is, and it's a shame, because we think that way more work into toxicology should be done, like looking at environmental contamination, helping. But the budgets for toxicology are minuscule compared to the rubbish that goes on with germ theory and the wasting of resources there.
And is it true, Sam, that this is what the people believe, and maybe you do, that this whole polio thing was about some chemicals or toxicity, and not about some virus that we caught and had polio?
Definitely, yeah. And that video, it's one of my favourites, actually. Recommend people to watch it if they're interested. Is on polio and toxicology. It's the premise. I think it was John Rappaport, actually, who I first heard this from, and it's true. It's like virus is the cover story, and it covers all manner of sins. And toxicology is one of the, I think, DDT for polio, and other probably nasty things too in there. But it's just amazing how they can get away with ginormous lies. And we're seeing it. We're just talking about it in your ad break before, actually, about how germs are the greatest excuse for wars now. Sure,
yeah.
And we're seeing that play out, how they can. It's a coverall. It's a great cover story, and you think this is how big this lie is, and people think, well, why is it important to why do you keep talking about that there's no viruses? Because this is how COVID happened.
This is the mother lode, right? This is the mother lode. Without the germ thing, the whole thing falls apart, right? The whole thing falls apart. Wow.
Yeah. And I think too, Patrick, it's these things, there's nothing unidimensional about it. So with polio, the fraud of the quote virus is one thing, but there's also a whole lot of other fraud with the way they classified the condition itself. Yes. Because we know people say to us, oh, look, no, DDT didn't come about until this year, and polio was described in the 1700s, etc. No, we know that it's to do with every aspect of the fraud of allopathic medicine involves creating these narratives in the background which make it look like all the answers are covered when all of them can be exposed. So with something like polio, you can just change the way it's defined. And, COVID was kind of the pinnacle. Yeah. You have this alleged disease which has no specific signs or symptoms. It's just, in some ways, it's genius to, the public.
It's amazing they got away with it, isn't it?
It's
amazing they got away with this whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. It's just crazy to think about what happened with no virus. Wow.
And I think it's been this massaging over time to get people to believe things like a test, like a PCR. They think now it's a diagnostic tool. It was never, ever designed that way. And we have all of these things, like people now think that a marketing campaign is a scientific presentation. Like they watch the news.
The COVID vaccine is safe and effective.
Yeah, safe and effective.
Like I remember watching, I don't know if you know Jeff Berwick, the dollar vigilante.
I do know Jeff. Yeah.
And there was a BBC story in 2020 saying that the crematoriums were burning around the clock and black smoke was coming out of Mexico City with all the deaths. And Jeff, that week, he just went round with his video camera and said, "Are you guys busy?" And they said, "No, it's really quiet this week, nothing happening." And but for some people, the BBC story was their evidence that COVID was real, because they said, look, black smoke coming out of Mexico, they're burning bodies. And this is the tragedy of the world we live in, where, we can break down a scientific paper and say, there's no virus in there. And people go, but black smoke in Mexico, Daddy.
Yeah. And we've seen the videos, I'm sure you have, of Carrie Mullis, who said that this whole PCR thing was just not meant, it's just made up. And he spent 2 years looking for the HIV virus. Carrie Mullis did. Never could find it. It didn't exist.
But, and Carrie he inspired us in some ways, and we're also heavily inspired by the Perth group.
Yeah.
And the approach is this, Patrick. If somebody makes a claim, like the CDC or Wikipedia, they make a scientific statement, we say, where is the reference? Because we'll look at that reference and we'll examine it very carefully under the microscope. And if the reference cannot back it up, that statement should be taken out. That's not a scientific statement anymore. It's just pure speculation. So I think Carrie he didn't, obviously, he got some things we'd say wrong, but I think he was absolutely spot on saying, if you make a claim, provide the references. If you say there's a virus, you show us the paper where the virus is shown to exist. If you say that there's a new disease sweeping around the world, you show us the paper that demonstrates that there is a new disease. So, and I think that's really the genius of Carrie Mullis.
Yeah, he seemed like really a sweet guy, and he just kind of left it. I don't know. Well, guys, girls, kids, cows, chickens, this was fun. Holy cow, with 2 hours. Sorry for keeping you so long.
Holy gosh.
I know.
No, that's fun.
It's like, what's up with that? So, drsambailey.com is a place to go, right? Poof, take you there. And then if Sam allows it, you can learn about Mark too. But, she has him on a short leash, so don't expect much. Just kidding.
Hey, no, it's all good, Patrick. And we
really
can just
an honor
say
to talk to you guys. Really.
We find that most people have lots of questions, and they'll say, well, what about rabies? And we have a video called What About Rabies?
Oh, you do? So, I was going to ask you about rabies, because
Yeah. So what my point is that people should just go to the website, look up the articles, look up the videos, and just use the search option.
Just type in whatever you want.
And see if you can find it.
Yeah, and if you haven't, then we'll try and make a video about it.
Yeah, so the whole rabies things, too, is just made up, too. I guess Dr. Cowan talked about it. Yeah, I had a really good natural vet years ago, and he said, well, just give them the one because you got to. It's against the law. That's it. Just don't do it a minute. Just, And if it wasn't against the law, I wouldn't have done that one, But around here, if you don't have a little tag and they find them, it's not good. So. But she did okay. Well, kids, here we are. What's going on for you two guys today in New Zealand? Homeschooling?
Mark's going to be on the roof.
He's going to be on the roof? Good.
Yeah. Just there's a little bit of water blasting to do on the concrete tiles, and the roof is a lot bigger than I thought. So it's going to be another day.
You have those tiles? You have those round red tile roof?
No, ours is the house we have is built in a Georgian manor style, and it's a beautiful home. The roof has like a flat tile, a concrete tile. They're really beautiful actually, but they just they haven't been water blasted for a few years, so we're just giving them a bit of a strip back to get them to their former glory.
Mm-hmm. And you homeschool every day, Samantha?
Yeah, well, we're kind of, to be honest, at the moment, we're doing unschooling. It's life.
Yeah.
But I feel like then it's less pressure at the moment. We're in box unpacking mode. So it's like just opening up boxes and going, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, we've only been here for like 5 days. So we're really just settling into the property and, getting things set up for animals, which we'll bring in soon.
Chicken soon, right? Chickens soon?
Yes. Yeah.
What? They're fun, aren't they? They're just so much fun. I love them.
Oh.
I love them.
Yeah.
So much fun. I want to just give a little plug for a friend of mine who used to be on the show. His name is Richard Maybury. Richard Maybury, Maybury. He has books called Blue Stocking Press. You might check it out because he has books written for the little ones all about money. How it works, how it's doing what it's doing, what is inflation, and they're just wonderful books for homeschoolers. So you might look at that. Blue Stocking Press, Richard Maybury.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You let them read about money and how it works and how it doesn't work and, things like this. Good stuff. Yeah. Get them early to understand that money is just like a cow and said, it's just a fairy tale. Just poof.
Yeah, well, our kids, I actually looked into the financial system about just after the crisis a decade ago, or a bit more than that now, 2009.
Yeah.
So, we actually have 50 books on the topic that I did a really deep dive into.
But not kids' books.
But, but we have been communicating that information to our kids since they've been born. All of them have known
that. Teaching them about it. Yeah, teaching them about
it. System.
Yeah. They know, like I'll do tricks with them with comparing like fiat currency with precious metals and asking them what they'd trade. And they've got very smart because if you say to them, can I give you this fiat note or a silver coin? They instantly go, well, what's the spot price for silver?
Right. Yeah, one of my favorite stories is when I was in high school, we had a 52 Chevy, and for a silver quarter, you could get a gallon of gas, right? It was about 25 cents a gallon. Today, if you have that same silver quarter, you can get 3 gallons of gas. Now, how's that? Isn't that cool? Yeah, that quarter is worth about, $7 right now? The same quarter.
Yeah.
That shows you the power of real money.
Definitely. And I think importantly going forward, and we've realized this, and that's why we've set up on this little farm, is that just having plant and equipment is great too, like having a barn, having equipment that you can dig over the soil, having glass houses, all that kind of stuff will get really important too. That's real resources rather than fiat currency sitting in a bank account.
You bet. Well, I love you too. Thank you. Appreciate it. You take care of yourself and let us know if we can do something, okay? We'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick. It's been a pleasure as always. It's a relaxing time with talking with you.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you. Take care. Say hi to the kids and the cows and the chickens and everybody. Okay, so we are going to take a break. I think it's lunchtime for Patrick, your congenial host, and we will see you on Friday. We take Thursdays off to work on our screenplays, and we'll see you Friday at 10 o'clock Central Time on OneRadioNetwork.com. I love you all very much. You're doing great. Don't let anybody ever tell you that you're just just don't listen to them. Just get a new friend. Just see. Do something else.
Broadcasting from the beautiful Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com.